We will talk about dildos after we've finished with doing serious things.
My name is Sophia Rajab-Latepan, and I am the managing partner of Latepan and Associates Advocates.
And to me, who is not as excited as she is,
thrilled.
My name is Tabitha Griffith-Sawoyo. I am also an advocate, and I work for an NGO known as Kalyn.
Maybe tell us a little bit about the work you do around sexual reproductive health or abortion rights.
Mm-hmm. Sophie, do you want to start?
I'll let you go first.
All right, so I work in a non-governmental organization that pretty much does three things around abortion. I'll not talk about the rest of the work that we do. First of all, we litigate, so we go to court on behalf of women and medical providers who have been charged and taken to court. And at any point, if I use Latin, a lot of legalese, you've got to stop me. So we do a lot of, going to court and representing women and medical providers who have been charged with abortion for free of charge. And we also do trainings, capacity building, as we call it, and we empower women to know their rights, their legal rights. We empower medical providers to know their rights, and we also generally sensitize communities so that they can be able to have less stigma on abortion issues. The last thing we do is we challenge laws. So we not only go to court, but we also make sure that if, say, for instance, Parliament is making a new law, that it is not one that is, backward, it is not one that punishes women, but it is one that is very progressive.
And I pretty much work with Kalyn on different projects, so that's really always a pleasure. And as Tabitha said, I represent providers, so medical providers who have been charged with abortion-related offenses, and I also represent women and girls who unfortunately have to go through this criminal justice system because of having accessed abortions. I also, just like Kalyn, train different medical providers on the law surrounding abortion, but also just like Kaz, just to clarify, sexual and reproductive rights is wide. So we actually work on a range of topics, including forced sterilization of women, mostly living with HIV/AIDS, female genital mutilation. There's a wide range of topics.
Sexual violence, rape,
violence,
incest, defilement.
Right. But for today, we're focusing on abortion.
Yes. I'm actually going to insert a song. Have you guys heard the
abortion?
Is that a song, or did you make it up?
No, we made it up.
Recently, there was a judgment that was made on the regulations around the abortion laws. I always struggle because I don't want to say the wrong thing, especially when it comes to legalese, and I'm a layman. A lot of people don't know what kind of privilege, if there was any before, what the gray area was regarding laws around abortion.
Right.
What was it like before the judgment for women who wanted to seek safe abortions?
Yeah. Which year do we start, Tabitha?
1963.
In 1963.
Wow, when we were
after independence.
When the laws were written.
Yes,
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Literally, that's where we start.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and if I can just try and compress it into like a little sweet short story. 1963, we get our independence. Part of getting our independence means that we also get to keep the colonial laws that were given to us, and one of those colonial laws is what we call the Penal Code. Yeah. So the Penal Code is a law, if I can, explain it in very simple terms, is a law that in it had penalties for things that were deemed as crimes. So for instance, before 2006, when we got the Sexual Offences Act, rape, incest, defilement was in the Penal Code. Things like theft, counterfeit,
actually, it's all crimes.
Anything that you know as a crime is in the penal
Don't be
code.
confused by the word penal.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the penis?
No.
Okay, got it. Thanks for that
So-
clarification, because I couldn't stop thinking of an eggplant. Jeez.
In that penal code, as is,
There's a chapter on
Between-
crimes against morality.
yes, which is around sections 158, 159, 160, and I don't want to get into like what the sections say, but between 1963 and 2010, if you were a woman who wanted to get an abortion in Kenya, you had to jump 7, 10, 15 loops. In terms of, number one, you had to, get the courage to test for the pregnancy, let it be positive, and then after that, get the courage to go to a hospital facility and demand for an abortion. And if truly you were deserving of an abortion, say, for instance, this is a woman who had high blood pressure, the practice as guided by the law that was there and the medical doctor's code of conduct is that you had to first get your doctor who would give an opinion and write down and say that this woman deserves a safe abortion or is in need of a safe abortion. Then that doctor had to get that opinion verified by at least 2 other people, 2 senior doctors, and one of whom had to be a psychiatrist. So we had to do like a mental evaluation of you, and then thereafter we give you the safe abortion.
Meanwhile, all this time is passing.
Time
Time is passing. And if you look at the
pregnancy is
statistics,
growing, right?
yes, and how many women we were losing, because there's one thing that remained constant between 1963 and now, that if you started the abortion elsewhere, so say for instance you squat, excuse me, Ooh. You don't squat, you squat.
Kizungu ilikuja na
Squatting
mimi.
and squatting. Let's go back to what I was
Did
saying.
you say squirting?
I said squatting at first, and then I quickly clarified and cleared the air.
So we're not squatting.
We're not squatting. Now you see, if you took aloe vera, this one, it does not help. If you took aloe vera, if you drank Coca-Cola, if you took malaria tablets, and you needed services, you could start them elsewhere, and then you could rush to a public health facility, and they would give you what we call in Swahili kuoshwa, which is cleaning, post-abortal care, free of charge. And nobody would ask you a question, and you would be discharged thereafter, and you would go home. So a lot of women preferred that because they discovered that if you went to a public hospital when you had already started the process elsewhere, nobody was going to ask you questions. So instead of jumping all these loops and holes and barriers where you've got to get a doctor to sign for you and then 2 other doctors to sign, a lot of women literally just put their lives in harm's way so that they could get a safe abortion.
And then it's also a question of access, right? Because you imagine how many psychiatrists are there in the country.
Yep.
You know what I mean? How many doctors actually there in the country, and how many people have access to doctors. So this illusion of safe abortion or even post-abortion care would really only be available to people of privilege. So poor people would be desperate.
Poor women and girls.
Poor women and girls would be desperate and would result into desperate measures and trying to get unsafe abortions. And I think we need to maybe define what that is.
Okay, what's the difference between a safe abortion and
Or maybe we
unsafe
start with an
abortion?
abortion.
Yes, what's an abortion?
What is an abortion? So an abortion is a termination of pregnancy before viability. And I am sorry.
Oh, that's a big word.
It is, but it's a thing that we need to know. That's the only thing we need to remember today.
Okay.
Viability.
What does that mean?
So essentially, if a pregnancy is not viable, and by viable we mean that it can't exist outside the womb of
The mother.
then that
alive.
pregnancy is not viable. So for instance, Cass, you have sex today and it's unprotected. Hopefully not, unless you're in a committed relationship.
And
with
we've
someone.
gotten tested, blah, blah,
And you've
blah.
gotten
I know the
tested, etc.,
details.
etc., etc., etc. So
Yeah.
you're pregnant, and it's planned or unplanned, whatever. And you find out a week from now that there was actual fertilization.
I really like your demonstrations.
And then, what do you call that thing after fertilization? Do you remember your biology?
Is it embryo or zygote?
Zygote?
Mhm.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
Right.
I knew that.
Did I? I hope you're right. I think I knew you were right.
Yeah, I got it.
So that's the thing. Like, obviously, this pregnancy evolves over time, and a pregnancy at 1 week isn't the same as a pregnancy at 7 months, right? So the idea of viability is that if the pregnancy can exist outside the womb of a mother, then that pregnancy is viable. Therefore, that won't be an abortion. But if the pregnancy cannot exist outside the life of the mother, for instance, you're 2 weeks pregnant, even if they remove whatever is inside of you, it can't actually survive and then become a full.
Yeah.
So that's what viability is.
Yes. And it's important to understand
If
that.
it cannot survive outside of the woman, then it is
not viable, and therefore you can terminate.
Okay,
That's an
got
abortion.
it, got it.
But if this thing can survive outside of your womb,
Yeah.
then it's viable, and therefore that's not an
Yeah.
abortion. So, for instance, a 7-month pregnancy can survive outside the womb of the mother.
Yes.
Through ICU, there's medicine, there's science, and and the baby can actually survive and thrive and grow and etc. But at 3 months, at 9 weeks, that's not the case, and that's really important to remember, because you can only get an abortion if the pregnancy is not viable.
Okay, so what is there a time period of when is the right time to have an abortion?
Yes.
So here's the thing in terms of viability. Different countries in the world have like a cap period where a pregnancy can exist outside the womb without the mother. In very developed countries, which Kenya is not, at 21 weeks, if we got and extracted the fetus from the mother, it can survive. It has a very high good chance of surviving at 21 weeks.
Yeah.
But in a Kenyan setting and many other developing countries, we just don't have the technique, the scientific know-how, the evolution of medicine, and many little fetuses that are at 21 weeks in Kenya cannot survive. So what is the best time period to get a safe abortion? The World Health Organization has what they call like the misoprostol chart, and also in Kenya because of the guidelines used to state what time frames a medical provider can offer safe abortion. The best, or what is most recommended, is 9 weeks. 9 weeks can be handled by a nurse, a clinical officer, or a doctor. 12 weeks is also...
And a midwife, yeah.
Yes, so at 12 weeks as well, the guidelines stated that these medical providers can still offer a safe abortion. Past 16 weeks, it's only a doctor, a medical doctor, a qualified medical doctor, and not just a qualified medical doctor, but also one who has extra training. So, for instance,
in this,
right?
Yes,
And
an obstetrician gynecologist is not just a GP, so he would or she would know something in addition to the reproductive health system. So at 16 weeks is not recommended, because at that point that is a very advanced gestational period. And the more we get into the gestational period, the more risk that you have in terms of how much your body can either bleed out or what other harm can come. So what happens is that on average, any trained health professional cannot in Kenya perform a safe abortion past 16 weeks.
Okay.
Most of the medical providers that I have worked with over the last 8 years have always indicated that they will not touch a pregnancy that is beyond 16 weeks in gestation.
And also just back to what Tabitha said, which was really important in terms of the safest period being up to 9 weeks, is because there are 2 types of abortions. Right? When we talk about safe abortion, there are 2 types of abortion. So one is medical abortion and one is surgical abortion. So the medical abortion is a combination of pills that you're given by your provider, and it's in a certain sequence. And then there's an extraction, and that's the end essentially of the procedure. And then the second one is a surgical abortion, and medical providers would often use a manual vacuum aspiration kit to suction out the fetus. And what's important to remember is that the combination of pills is what you're given if it's a an early pregnancy. So it's much easier, it's much safer. The more the pregnancy develops, the longer the gestational period, the less safe it is. So then there will come a time where they actually can't give you the combination of pills, and they'll have to surgically extract it. So it's an issue of the sooner the better.
The better. And the safer.
And the safer.
And I just want to also emphasize something about self-medication, because it's really important for us, Sophia, to caution any woman who is out there and who goes on Google.
This is not one of those things to Google.
Yeah, so Dr. Google, do not use Dr. Google for the drugs, because you could access the drugs, but with different gestational periods, my dear ones, also comes a different dosage.
Right.
So for instance, a 9-week... I just remembered something. Continue. All right. So put it
milligrams and micrograms.
Yes, there's a difference between milligrams and micrograms.
So you're out here on Google trying to figure out how you're gonna self-abort, and then you end up actually overdosing yourself and killing yourself because you don't know the difference between a microgram and a milligram.
Right.
Right. So do not self-medicate when it comes to abortion. Don't do it.
Shoot the questions.
Yeah. The first one is that time period.
Yeah.
How do
they calculate it?
Yes. How do they calculate the time period?
Yes.
That's the first question. And the second one I'm going to ask, because my brain is so to-do, so I don't forget. What do we have to say about a lot of practitioners? I don't know if the word is practitioners, but the ones who offer the phone call and the delivery for the medical abortions.
Telemedicine.
Teach me.
You're going to answer both questions.
No, do you want to take LMP? I'll take the other one.
All right. Okay. So the first question, because if we can
rewind it.
Gestational period is based on your last monthly period, right? Because you'll go to the doctor and the doctor will ask you, when was your last monthly period?
Right.
And then the girl will say, where's my phone? Let me get my phone. And they'll take their phone, and every single person nowadays records either on a calendar or there's an app.
Statement. Not every single person
really?
No, tabs.
I'm lying. Because
how many people have phones? Even me who has the app, like sometimes I forget.
Here's the assumption I'm making in my head, that this is an average middle class woman who has gone to a medical provider.
Yes.
The one from
and who's
the
watching this
rural,
actually.
yes,
Exactly.
and who is watching this?
Yeah.
Because the rural person or the girl from Madare, Kibera, Mukuru is not even having an iPhone or a smartphone where they're
I used to do
it
it manually, actually. Before I got the app, I used to do it manually, and it was terrible.
I mean, ever since I discovered there's an importance to know when your last monthly period was, I used to record it, and I still do. I'm so old-fashioned. I actually record it on my Google Calendar. Like, I put to-do in my to-do list and everything, and I'm
is
like,
your Google Calendar like linked to your email?
No. It's
Like
just,
your
Lord, yes.
A Skype call.
It pops. Last monthly period. Last month, by now you should be receiving your next monthly period.
Tabitha,
did you have your last monthly period? Has it come yet? We are noticing you are at 31 days. So this is the most distracting conversation I've ever had.
Focus tabs.
So last monthly period, and the doctor will calculate this. So based on that, and then they will now do either for doctors who are more advanced, they will do a blood work to first of all confirm that you're pregnant, and then after that they'll now do the ultrasound scan, which sort of now confirms what is the gestational period, how big is the pregnancy. Now, at 0 to 9 weeks, this is the most fascinating thing, ladies and gentlemen. World Health Organization has a misoprostol chart, all right, that shows the doctor the dosage versus the gestational period. And I think because it's important at some point, we need to show them to actually see the misoprostol chart, that the doctor just says, okay, so we've just discovered you are at 8 weeks. This is the dosage at 8 weeks. World Health Organization has a technical guidance note and a misoprostol chart that guides doctors in how much to give you in terms of the drugs versus how big.
Again, do not.
You guys throw around?
Okay. So before we say that, I also just want to throw in a word of caution with regard to self-medication, right? Because we are tech savvy, we can access this information. But over and above that chart, there are also other extraneous circumstances that your body could be experienced as very different from somebody else's.
Exactly.
So still you need somebody who's trained to understand that. So things like your BMI, whether you have a medical condition like high blood pressure, or you have blood clots, or this, that, and the other, like all that is going to be factored in terms of your care.
Yeah.
So I would completely caution. I mean, we can go to the internet and we can check misoprostol and mifepristone, and we can see these drugs, but then it's just like do not self-medicate.
What is misoprostol? What is mifepristone? So this is misoprostol is a drug that is used by doctors, obstetrician gynecologists, for a variety of reasons, not just abortion.
Many, yeah.
In fact, when an obstetrician wants to, let me call it in layman's terms, open up your cervix, they will put a little bit of misoprostol to ripen the cervix even during giving birth.
Yeah.
Misoprostol is also used for peptic ulcers. And how women discovered that misoprostol can be used for abortion was that there's a lot of women who had developed peptic ulcers, and then as a result discovered that when they were taking their misoprostol, it sort of also contracted their uterine and they had a miscarriage. So that is how doctors made the link and then discovered, voila,
But
this drug does more than just cure peptic ulcers.
I'm sorry, I just feel like if I was a doctor, I'd have figured out during the trials, the medical trials.
Well,
right.
Here's the thing. This is what happened. I think they never tested it on a pregnant woman.
Pregnant women. I still want to
So
answer
we're talking
my
about
question.
misoprostol. No, the good thing is that what I answer will actually lead to why telemedicine may not be the best solution in Kenya as now.
Right.
So as I said, misoprostol used for a variety of reasons in Kenya by not just Kenyan doctors but worldwide. Right? Peptic ulcers, ripening the cervix. If they want to expel something from your body, they're going to just put a little bit of misoprostol. Now, mifepristone is the second drug that is used in access to safe abortion. Swallow it with water?
Tabitha,
Yes.
are you saying too much?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Go to a doctor.
Okay.
Actually,
Or a nurse or a midwife or a
clinical officer.
A qualified health practitioner.
Excuse me. This is the thing I want to answer now. Please, may I answer the question?
Yeah.
Might you require any further information? I have attached information in the description box below. Don't forget to follow us on all of our social media platforms. That's @thespreadpod across the board.